Hey everybody, welcome to Dangerous Ideas, where I bring you the core reality behind your mainstream headlines, the stuff the mainstream media cannot or will not bring you. That's kind of my job, and that's what I do here. So thank you for joining me. Today I'm going to bring, I'd say, the closest we've seen to some evidence, to a bit of a smoking gun, could be a smoking gun, about Epstein's connections to the CIA, whether he was working with the CIA. Obviously, there's different levels of working with the CIA. There are CIA officers, CIA agents, and then there are informants, and then there are people that do occasional dirty biz for the CIA. So there's a lot of different levels of that, but I'm going to bring you, I don't know, you guys can tell me if you think it's a smoking gun or not. Definitely very interesting new update on that. But a lot more about what we continue to see from the Epstein files as more evidence and truth comes out. But I, again, am going to bring you the stuff that the mainstream media is largely refusing to cover. Also, Noam Chomsky's wife has put out a statement on his seeming friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, and much more. The FBI came to their new conclusion on Epstein, and it's gonna shock you. Also, Trump continues to starve Cuba, because obviously that's one of the most important things we could be doing right now, is just making sure that Cubans suffer. I think that's really important to all of us. I know that for those of you who voted for Donald Trump, I mean, I don't know why you did that. I don't know why you voted for Kamala Harris either. I don't know why any of you did that. But for those of you who did, I know that for those of you who voted for Donald Trump, you very much were like, I'm voting for him because I want to starve Cubans. I know that many, many people are like, finally, he's delivering on the starving of Cubans. It's a lot of people out there saying that. But okay, let's get to Epstein. And I like to start with something fun. This is being projected in Los Angeles right now. For those of you listening to the podcast, I'll describe it. On a wall in Los Angeles, it says "Guardians of Pedophiles" in the font of Guardians of the Galaxy, GOP, and it shows Donald Trump and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, etc. Mike Johnson, dressed up as if they are these superheroes called Guardians of Pedophiles. Now, I will say, it's not just Republicans. There's a lot of Democrats connected to these pedophiles, right? Bill Clinton, very prevalent in the Epstein files. So let's not pretend it's just Republicans there. But they're definitely doing, the Republicans right now are the ones doing the more effort in protecting the pedophiles. It's just probably because they're the ones in power. And I'd say if you were to actually look at the numbers, well, let's see, you got Bill Gates, you got Elon Musk, Republican, you have Bill Gates, Democrat, or traditionally he is. So you really got both sides. You got both sides in there doing dirty, nasty shit. That's because they're all capitalist titans and they're all sociopaths. And that's one of my revelations that I brought forward in a new Substack. It was, well, not newish. It was last end of last week, and that one went kind of viral, read by 2.5 million people. So if you want to check that out, that's at reallycamp.substack.com. But let's get to one more video before I bring you that update on Epstein and the CIA. This is Representative Massey, Thomas Massey, saying that he's willing to reveal the client list. Well, hold on. And yeah, anyway.
I'm ready to do that if the victims want me to. They believe that the best way to get justice is to force the DOJ to release these names. I've already read one name in a committee with the FBI director there. That's Jess Staley. And again, he may or may not be guilty, but he's been accused by these victims, the lawyer tells me. And there are other names. I don't have them in my possession, but if the victims want to give them to me, I've expressed that I'm willing to do that. But again, the best way is to force the DOJ to release those names on those 302 forms.
So he's saying he is willing to read the client list, and he mentions Jess Staley. Jess Staley, many people don't know that name, but he was one of the, top people at JP Morgan Chase. And for a while, it seemed like he was going to be the one to replace Jamie Dimon. He was going to be the next up to run JP Morgan Chase. But instead, all of this came out about his close-knit ties to Epstein, and now Jess Staley's career has largely been blown up. So at least you have some people's careers suffering a little bit due to their connections to Epstein. Of course, there is a shocking difference to some degree between the people connected to Epstein who happen to live and work across the pond there, across the Atlantic Ocean. Keir Starmer's having quite an ordeal trying to explain why he had Mandelson, as a top position in his Labor government. Mandelson, very, very connected to Epstein, and has shown that he made payments. Was it payments from Epstein to him? It might have been, or payments to Epstein from him. Either way. And so Mandelson has lost his job, and you're seeing that somewhat across the Atlantic. In the United States, you see people having some difficulty, maybe, Bill Gates feels a little awkward or something, but no one's getting fired. Donald Trump is one of the most prevalent names in the Epstein files. As last I checked, let me see here, still president of the United States. So you're not seeing a lot go down against the people in the United States. By the way, the Clintons did finally agree that they would testify to Congress about the Epstein files, which, as far as I can tell, will be hilarious. I think we all know it will be hilarious. I'm sure everyone has the highest hopes that Bill Clinton is just finally going to reveal exactly what happened. Yeah, considering his last testimony to Congress, in which he was being grilled about Lewinsky, and he had such famous questions as, "It depends on what the word is means." Yes, that's the type of testimony you're going to get from Bill Clinton. So we all have that to look forward to. At least it'll be good television. But here's what I wanted to show you as, I don't know if I'd call it a smoking gun, but it's something. It's something. This is from the Washington Post yesterday. Epstein's lawyers, according to the new files, asked the CIA for records that could show Epstein's affiliation with the agency. Now, that might not mean much if it was after Epstein's death, and even his lawyers were like, I wonder if he was with the CIA. Let's see if we can find out. But no, this was in 2014. So Epstein very much alive and clearly consulting with his lawyers on this. Let me read from the piece. One piece of correspondence from the CIA sent to Epstein's attorney said, "We searched for CIA-originated responsive records that might reflect an open or otherwise acknowledged agency affiliation for a period between 1999, when Epstein appears to have previously sought such information, and 2011. We were unable to locate any information or records," states the letter from the CIA's Information and Privacy Coordinator, whose name is redacted, "with respect to responsive records that would reveal a classified connection to the CIA. The CIA can neither confirm nor deny the existence or non-existence of records responsive to your request." Now, that itself doesn't mean anything, right? The CIA often says we can't confirm or deny things. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. But what I find interesting is these are Epstein's lawyers, meaning Epstein is consulting with them, and either he asked his lawyers to go see if they could get evidence of his working with the CIA because it's useful to him. Keep in mind that despite his 2008 sweetheart deal, Epstein still had other legal battles. He had the battle in front of the public as to whether he was just a pedophile or whether he was a philanthropist. And he was going through big efforts to try and convince people that he was not a pedophile, but instead just a wonderful financier, etc. So he might find such documents showing he was working for the CIA useful to say, look, I work for the U.S. government. I do good things. And, for people who think the CIA does good. I know it's tough to even put yourself mentally in that place of someone who's got kind of a mental functioning of, I'd say, some sort of toad or frog type thing. But there are a lot of people who just like really high five anybody connected to the CIA. So he might have wanted to present it publicly. Either way, Epstein's lawyers obviously knew what Epstein thought. So why would they go asking for information showing his connection to the CIA if they didn't at least think there was a chance that Epstein was connected to the CIA? To me, this, like, of course, the Washington Post doesn't cover it this way, but to me, this is like a smoking gun. I cannot fathom. I would love, in the comments, please tell me, is there some explanation for Epstein's lawyers while he's alive going to the CIA saying, please give us information that we can demonstrate that Epstein was connected to the CIA, if Epstein himself didn't know he was connected to the CIA? And this also, I also put out an article that just came out today about Epstein's connections to Israel and Mossad. These are not mutually exclusive. In fact, I'd argue they go hand in hand. Many who work with the CIA have some connection to Mossad, if not at least someone they talk with at Mossad. We learned from the JFK files that John Jesus Angleton, or if you're feeling saucy, John Jesus Angleton, the second at the CIA under Dulles, was working hand in hand with Mossad. And that was actually one of the most redacted things in the JFK files, meaning they revealed many other things and they would redact one little half a sentence, and it was that half a sentence showing Angleton was working with Mossad. So they're not mutually exclusive. In fact, Epstein could have been working with both, and it would not be shocking at all. But again, please, somebody give me an explanation that does not mean Epstein had himself thought, at minimum, thought he'd been working with the CIA. Let's see. The agency concluded it could neither confirm nor deny the existence or non-existence related to the request, adding that to do so otherwise when challenged under FOIA would result in the exposure of intelligence information, sources, methods, blah, 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 which could harm our national security and severely undermine, blah, blah, blah. The July 30th, 2014 denial letter indicates that Epstein's lawyer had been seeking, quote, records, documents, files, communications, memoranda, orders, agreements, and or instructions relating to or referring to Mr. Epstein for a 14-year span until early 2014. But yeah, I can't. I can't come up with any explanation other than Epstein himself thought he was connected to the CIA, which would mean something. And you know, as many of you know, and this was also mentioned in my column today, that Alex Acosta, he ultimately became labor secretary, but he was the one who in 2008 gave Epstein the sweetheart deal, despite Epstein getting successfully prosecuted for prostitution of a child. He gave him the sweetheart deal, and Alex Acosta had said at one point, I was told he was connected to intelligence. I was told it was above my pay grade. Basically, leave him alone, give him a deal. We can't go after this guy. Acosta later, after being pressured immensely, said, never mind. I was just joking with you. It's just a jokey joke. So there's a lot revealing these things, revealing that Epstein's connections to Mossad and CIA, but he also, in the files, you'll also find Epstein was connected to Leon Panetta. They knew each other fairly well, and Panetta was also former head of the CIA. But anyway, here's my latest. I'm obviously not going to read the whole thing right here, but here's my latest over at Substack, free to read and check out. 13 ways Epstein worked for Israel, or else loved to make it look like he did. So, and it's a very short column, just because I wanted it to be easy for people to go through all of the connections between Epstein and Israel and Israeli intelligence. But yeah, it's a lot of interesting information coming forward. But I also wanted to talk about I also wanted to talk about Noam Chomsky's, or rather his wife's. Noam Chomsky, for those of you who don't know, Noam Chomsky has been in a coma, not a coma. Sorry, he just can't speak. He had a stroke. It's been like 2 years, and it's been a while. And he can't speak. He can't write. The family is very closely guarded on how with it he is, and whether he, is able to communicate with them in some other manner or what have you. But so it's not like he's speaking out about it or can answer to any of this. As many of you know, Noam Chomsky, and this started, I'd say after 2014, 2015, like when Chomsky started becoming friends with Epstein to some extent. And many people are understandably disturbed by this. I very much have respected Chomsky through the years. I ultimately disagreed with him on some things. He was not amazing, at least later in his life, not amazing on Israel. He was anti-BDS. And I had him on my show. The only time I ever interviewed him on Redacted Tonight several years ago. I pushed him on how the two-party system is, and it was something I initially learned from him. The two-party system, or at least him and some others, the two-party system agree on 80 to 90% of the central tenets of the American empire. The core beliefs are they're one party. So yes, you can tinker around the edges on issues like abortion, maybe, but then of course the Democrats don't do anything. They had years to codify abortion into our laws, and they never did. So I asked him about that, and he said, "Oh, that used to be true, but it's not anymore because Trump's so insane," or something like that, which I disagree with. I think it's still true. But anyway, many people are understandably upset. Chomsky's wife has finally put out a statement. You can read it on Facebook. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's a long statement, and it essentially says that they were friends with Epstein. He took advantage of them, and they didn't do their homework essentially on who this guy really was. And I think I basically agree with Chris Hedges' take on it. Hedges knew Chomsky far better than I ever did. I only did that one interview with Chomsky. The only time I ever met Chomsky was via Zoom for one interview. Hedges knew him far better and also respected him for many years. And Chris Hedges put out in a short article, Noam Chomsky, Jeffrey Epstein, and the Politics of Betrayal. And I'll read a little bit of what Hedges says. He says, "I don't expect much from politicians, corporate tycoons, the presidents of prestigious universities, billionaire philanthropists, celebrities, royalty, or oligarchs. They live in narcissistic and hedonistic bubbles that cater to their self-worship and moral depravity. I do expect a lot from intellectuals, such as Noam Chomsky. The explanation by his wife, Valeria, Noam suffered a severe stroke 2023, incapacitated. But her explanation of the relationship with Epstein is filled with the fatuous excuses used by all those who have been outed in the Epstein emails and documents. And I also think it's important that, unlike some of these other people like Elon Musk that are like, hey, dog, when can I come to your wellness party on the island? Chomsky, it seems, was largely hanging out with Epstein with his wife, with other people that Chomsky wanted to communicate with. So, you can choose to believe Chomsky at age whatever, 80, 85 was secretly dodging away from his wife to get in on the child sex trafficking. If you'd like to believe that, I think it's probably more that Chomsky was happy to use the things that Epstein gave him, which was the connections, the plane, the apartments in New York, etc. And that's probably the extent of it. But to continue from what Hedges says, he says, according to Valeria, she and Noam were overly trusting. This led to poor judgment. She writes that she and Noam were ensnared by dinners with luminaries at Epstein's mansion, flights on his private jet, nicknamed the Lolita Express, a reference of sexual exploitation of girls that Noam certainly would have recognized, financial assistance, trips to Epstein's ranch. And I don't think there's any evidence Chomsky went to the island, but Epstein had a ranch in like New Mexico or something, and the use of one of Epstein's apartments in New York. Like everyone else outed in Epstein's files, she and Noam never witnessed any inappropriate behavior from Epstein or others, she claims. Noam, of all people, knows the predatory nature of the ruling class and the cruelty of capitalists, where the vulnerable, especially girls and women, are commodified as objects to be used and exploited. He was not fooled by Epstein. He was seduced. His association with Epstein is a terrible and to many unforgivable stain. It irreparably tarnishes his legacy. If there's a lesson here, it is this. The ruling class, and this is my favorite few sentences of the whole piece, the ruling class offers nothing without expecting something in return. The closer you get to these vampires, the more you become enslaved. Our role is not to socialize with them. It is to destroy them. And that's, let's assume the least bad version of this, which is Chomsky didn't see anything bad. He just went to these dinners and used the jet occasionally and hung out at a ranch. Let's assume the breast version would actually fit more appropriately, but the best version of this. And I'm still very saddened and upset by his decision to want to be around these people, to want to talk with Jeffrey Epstein and to want to talk to the other people, whoever Jeffrey Epstein introduced him to. I think Ehud Barak was one of the ones that Chomsky was interested in speaking to. Maybe that explains why he was garbage on Israel, at least later in his life. And there's also, according to the emails, I guess it seems likely that Valeria, the wife, was also very was even more interested in these, staying at these nice apartments and ranches and jets and things than Noam Chomsky was. But either way, I would not even want to be in the same room as these people. And so I find it odd to not just find it odd, I find it repulsive to make those decisions, to want to hang out with these people. And you also, you see what happens to people who decide it's fine to become friends with these ruling elite who are monsters, who are sociopaths. Eventually, generally speaking, they're either co-opted into the ruling elite's sociopath systems or they're pushed out. And we can see that with someone like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, used to have on guests like me or like Peter Joseph or Abby Martin, etc. Now his guests are Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Mark Zuckerberg, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, just the most repulsive of the repulsive of vampiric, disgusting, parasitic human beings. And now you see what it's done to Joe Rogan's politics. He is now kind of co-opted into that system. He's defending Peter Thiel. He had on a guest the other day who spent almost the entirety of the thing not exactly defending Jeffrey Epstein, but basically trying to get everyone to believe the least horrific version of everything, which is like, I didn't see many young girls. I don't think it had much to do with young people at all. Maybe some barely legal. It's like, what his name's Mike Benz. What makes you have to defend this disgusting human being while we have plenty of victims who have come forward? Some of them are now dead, but there are victims who have come forward and said what was done. It's not that tough to find them. Go read their statements. Virginia Giuffre, no longer alive. Maria Farmer, many others. And you might have seen there was a press conference where a large group of women victims that stood in front of the Capitol, and they basically, through one of their spokespeople, said, we're willing to tell you who the clients were. So this Congress should let you know who the clients were because we're willing to do it. And that hasn't happened yet. But as a clip I played earlier, Massey has said he would reveal the list if the victims want him to do that. But here's what the FBI, Kash Patel was another one who went on Joe Rogan to defend it all and say there was nothing. Epstein wasn't doing anything. He was trafficking girls to himself. Okay, there was no client list there, no nothing. And this just came out today or yesterday The FBI has concluded that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't running a sex trafficking ring for powerful men. The FBI researched it, looked into it, and they've decided all good. Nothing wrong here. Which is funny because in the UK and some other countries, they've found the exact opposite. While investigators collected ample proof that Epstein sexually abused underage girls, they found scant evidence that well-connected financier. I'm so sick of calling him a fucking financier. Call him a pedophile. Call him a goddamn shit show of a human being. But financier? Well-connected douchebag led a sex trafficking ring serving powerful men. An Associated Press review of internal Justice Department records shows videos and photos seized from Epstein's homes in New York, Florida, and the Virgin Islands didn't depict victims being abused or implicate anyone else in their crimes, a prosecutor wrote. There's no, other than the 900 victims who've come forward, there's no evidence that anything has happened. And by the way, this AP article, despite correctly saying that the FBI found no sex trafficking, it doesn't make the leaps to what we actually see. Like it's like, this is the FBI trying to cover this shit up. And of course the AP is going to ignore that or leave it unsaid. An examination of Epstein's financial records, including payments he made to entities linked to influential figures in academia, finance, and global diplomacy, found no connection to criminal activity, said another internal memo. The Epstein investigation began in 2005 when the parents of a 14-year-old girl reported that she was molested at the millionaire's home in Florida. Oh, so no evidence except for the evidence, you mean? Police would later identify at least 35 girls with similar stories. Oh, but no evidence, right? Zero evidence. Epstein was paying high school girls $200 to $300 to give him sexualized massages. 2011 and again in 2019, investigators interviewed Virginia Giuffre, who lawsuits and news interviews have accused Epstein of arranging for her to have sexual encounters with numerous men, including Britain's former Prince Andrew. And she said she was tortured and sexually attacked by Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel. In court documents, she said that. Also in her memoir, she doesn't give his name, but she says a high-powered prime minister, which most people believe is Ehud Barak. And then they mentioned that, Giuffre killed herself. Oh, did she kill herself? A couple of months after surviving being hit by a bus, and a couple of months after saying on her Twitter that she would never take her own life, and if she does, don't believe it? You mean that? In a memoir published after she killed herself last year, right? Giuffre wrote, the prosecutors told her they didn't include her in the case against Ghislaine Maxwell because they didn't want her allegations to distract the jury. Yeah, you don't want the jury distracted by truth, would you? That'd be a real bitch if they ended up distracted by reality. She insisted her accounts of being trafficked to elite men were true. So there's the FBI just came out that they have found no evidence. And again, you got to get to the deeper levels of this whenever you're talking about it, which your mainstream media will never get to. Even many of your independent media won't get to the fact that a lot of this, and I wrote a column about it, I hope you'll go read it, reallycamp.substack.com. But a lot of this at its deepest level is we live in a socioeconomic system that puts sociopaths at the top. If you are a sociopath, you are far more likely to be willing to do the things that need to be done in order to take control and own this society. Those are the billionaires. That's almost all the billionaires. Occasionally you have some weirdo who ends up becoming a billionaire because he invented, heated socks or something. But in general, they're sociopaths. And as I say in the column, it doesn't mean that sociopaths automatically become billionaires, but it does mean that that billionaires are almost always sociopaths. And this is how they end up with that much power. And this is why this level of criminality, and we're seeing the connections to Epstein from so many of these different people, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Prince Andrew, Jess Staley, the list goes on and on, Woody Allen. By the way, I heard a great line. Woody Allen mentioned many times in the files, in the Epstein files, apparently good friends with Epstein, but there is no evidence in the files that he cheated on his daughter. So that is good. That is, we should really be proud of him for that. Okay, I am going to move on to the next topic here. I want to get to, and I'm just going to show this quick video. I don't have a lot on this, but the Winter Olympics athletes for the United States that are finally you have like this awakening in the United States where it's like, you can be an athlete. It doesn't mean you got to be proud of this shit show. It doesn't mean you got to be proud of a U.S. empire run by pedophiles and assholes. And so we're seeing more of them speak out at least a little bit. Here's a quick clip of Team USA. His name is Chris Lillis. Sorry, I don't follow. I don't follow really any sports almost, but I definitely don't follow like curling and snowboarding. Of the sports I don't follow, those are the ones I don't follow the most. So I couldn't tell you who these people are, but big names in fill in the blank.
I feel heartbroken about what's happened in the United States when, I'm pretty sure you're referencing ICE and some of the protests and things like that. I think that as a country, we need to focus on respecting everybody's rights and making sure that we're treating our citizens as well as anybody with love and respect. And I hope that when people look at athletes compete in the Olympics, they realize that that's the America that we're trying to represent.
It brings up mixed emotions to represent the U.S. right now, I think. It's a little hard. There's obviously a lot going on that I'm not the biggest fan of, and I think a lot of people aren't. If it aligns with my moral values, I feel like I'm representing it. Just because I'm wearing the flag doesn't mean I represent everything that's going on in the U.S. So yeah, I just kind of want to do it for my friends and my family and the people that support me getting here.
Thank you. Thank you for not getting up there and going, yeah, best country in the world. Now, granted, if I had won the surfboarding medal, I know it's not surfboard, snowboarding medal, I would have been like, yeah, down with the empire and down with Zionist apartheid genocide states that we're funding and murdering people. So I might have said something slightly different, but at least they're not doing the thing that, I saw through my entire childhood, which was no matter what the U.S. was doing, didn't matter if we're killing babies in Iraq. You just had every athlete going up there, yes, USA. So at least there's some questioning of what the hell this empire stands for. And speaking of what the hell this empire stands for, here's the only thing, normally about half this show is on Israel and the genocide, but this is the only thing on Israel I have for this episode. They continue to go after Francesca Albanese. U.S. sanctions, and most of you know, but she's been this amazing UN rapporteur who's continued to bring us the truth about Gaza, the truth about the genocide, the truth about murdering of tens of thousands of innocent people. And for doing that, here's the result. U.S. sanctions have turned UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese into a global financial outcast, leaving her unable to even open bank accounts or use credit cards in any country after being added to the U.S. Treasury Department's list of specially designated nationals. This is for standing up against genocide. Albanese said, this is not about law, but about power, noting that the sanctions have effectively cut her off from the global financial system, with even banks willing to help refusing out of fear. Banks that are normally willing to help refusing out of fear of secondary U.S. sanctions. Members of her family, including her husband, face potential sanctions risks that could include fines of up to $1 billion or 20 years in prison, simply for conducting financial transactions with her, making her shunned even in the simplest daily dealings. And for those of you who don't know, many places in Europe, it's even more difficult in the United States than in the United States to use cash. In the United States, there's a lot of places that stores and things that say we're cash free or whatever. In many areas of Europe, like Sweden, you can live there for months and never see a piece of paper, never see a coin. So there are many places across Europe where you couldn't even get by if you didn't have a card or an app on your phone that's connected to a credit card or connected to a bank account. And so by unbanking her, they are making it nearly impossible for her to exist. And that story is barely getting any coverage to begin with, but here's the deeper side of this, which is this will ultimately be done to any of us who stand up against the ruling elite, against the empire, against genocide. It is being tried out almost. I mean, I've said this before about other things. These are trial balloons. When you see something that hasn't really been done before, this type of thing has been done to, Iran diplomats and things like that, but it's never been done to somebody that's part of an allied nation, part of the UN, etc. These are test balloons to see how the world reacts, to see how well it works, to see how well it screws up her life, and to see whether it screws up her efforts to report on genocide. And, I guess in many ways so far they go, wow, look, it's working. She has a very difficult life now. She can barely get by. Her money and it can't be in a bank. She can't use credit cards. She can't fly probably almost anywhere. This is great. We've really made her life hell. And this is the type of thing that will be eventually done to any of us who stand up and fight back against empire and against a ruling elite of sociopaths and parasites. So I think this story is important because of her, because she's a fucking hero. But it's even more important because of what it says in general. And this is part of why they want to get us all into a kind of general surveillance of all our monetary transactions. Even if the U.S. government ultimately one day switches to some stable coin crypto, it will be useful to track all of our movements and decide who they want to cut off from society. And then you don't even need to put them in prison. Yeah, that takes, you got to have a whole jury trial and all that shit to put them in prison. Instead, let's just make it so that they basically can't leave their house. They have to call a friend just to buy an apple. Let's just make that the case. And they won't be able to fly anywhere and they won't be able to do anything much online. That'd be easier. Then we won't even have to worry about bringing any kind of charges against them. We can just cut them off at the knees for disliking us. Okay, let's keep moving. Well, let me pause just for a second and say I hope you guys. I hope you think this show is worth supporting. As maybe you can tell, I get almost zero ad dollars. I have no billionaire backers. I don't know why. It's tough to figure out. Maybe it's because I called them all sociopaths. Not sure. Anyway, it really is whether you guys want to see this show continue and my work continue for $8 a month is kind of what it comes down to. To all those of you who have signed up, incredible. Thank you for supporting the show. And the way to do that, and you pay, you go out to a nice dinner, you're probably paying $60 or more. You get a ticket to a concert, and a cheap ticket to a concert now is like $100. So basically, for either one of those, you could be contributing to funding this show for a year. Like $8 a month, or it's actually less than that if you sign up for a year. It's more like $6.60 a month if you sign up for a year. And it's like for the cost of less than one nice dinner, you could help fund this show for a year. And that's at realleecamp.substack.com is an easy place to sign up. But you can also do patreon.com/leecamp or join the community at Locals, which is leecamp.net, will take you there. But a lot of people have found it easy to sign up at realleecamp.substack.com. And I hope that you guys deem this show worthy. Please deem me worthy. That would be amazing. Okay. Let's keep going with how the Democrats built ICE. Thank you, Soon Heaven, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. Let's go to how the Democrats built ICE. Many of you know that ICE is not that old. It was created in 2003, but Obama greatly increased the funding of ICE. And this is from Frontline Medics on Instagram. You can follow it there. And they got some great information. What the records show, everyone talks about ICE as if it's a Trump or Republican invention. But the history, data, budgets, laws, and deportation numbers tell a different story. ICE is a bipartisan institution. And by the way, right now, what they're debating about with, what the Democrats are holding up the funding for and about ICE, et cetera. Well, they want certain things, certain little things to be different about ICE, like no more roving patrols or you can't wear a face mask. So they want to change these tiny little things and yet keep the funding of ICE the same or higher. So why, if they actually meant that they wanted to do shit about ICE, wouldn't they decrease the funding, decrease the manpower, decrease the weaponry? No. We don't like that they're wearing face masks. We're just going to change that. Okay, awesome. That'll do it. Anyway, they continue, but the history, data, budgets, laws, and deportation numbers tell a different story. ICE is a bipartisan institution. Trump might weaponize it with novel cruelty, but Democrats built fund and normalized it. Trump gives ICE spectacle and impunity, but Democrats gave it the infrastructure. Trump can only wield ICE because Democrats had already erected its machinery. And erected is correct because we are getting screwed. But I also like to point in here that this reminds me of when I had said many years ago, and I continue to say it, that even if you love the Democrats, they're putting in place, this is back when they were in power, they're putting in place a dictator's toolkit. Even if you think Obama's the best thing in the world, they're putting in place a dictator's toolkit. And even though this was like 8 years before Trump would win the presidency, ironically, at the time, I threw a joke in there. I go, even if you love Obama, he's putting in a dictator's toolkit so that if Jeb Bush or Donald Trump were to become president, they have a dictator's toolkit at their fingertips. It was a joke. I said it as a joke in like 2008. And here we are. So what I'm saying is I manifested the Trump presidency. Trump can only wield ICE because Democrats had already erected the machinery. Clinton, in 1996, under Bill Clinton, Democrats passed AEDPA and IRA. Sounds like a pirate that just stubbed his toe. IRRRAI. Building the legal cage ICE would later inherit. These laws expanded deportability, imposed mandatory detention, eliminated judicial discretion, and accelerated removals. Clinton also implemented prevention through deterrence, pushing crossings into remote desert terrain. The desert became a weapon, and exposure became enforcement. Border deaths rose from dozens per year to hundreds. More than 10,000 immigrants are estimated to have died in the years following this legislation. So yet again, you have Bill Clinton. They're all the same, really. You have Bill Clinton doing something that kills, tens of thousands of innocent people, and they go, yay, that means it's working. It's like our sanctions. We murder like babies and grandmas, and then they give press briefings where they go, it's working because the people are starving. They legit have said that about Iran. What we did is working because the people are suffering. And who dies first? Well, the babies and the grandmas and the grandpas. So, yay, we're killing the babies and the grandmas and the grandpas. Go us. Go, let's go celebrate our gold medal on that podium at the Olympics. Go USA. Bush then names it after 9/11. George W. Bush created the Department of Homeland Security and formally established ICE in 2003. That was the bureaucratic birth. Under Barack Obama, ICE was expanded, professionalized, and normalized. Record deportations, secure communities, and massive budget growth turned ICE into a massive apparatus, not a radish, and routinized deportation. Obama administration, under Obama, deportations reached historic highs. In 2012 alone, more than 400,000 people were forcibly removed. Across 8 years, nearly 3 million people were deported, more than under any modern administration. So Obama still holds the record, I guess, is what they're saying, for deportations. Now, the reason you can't just look at deportations because of what Trump's doing, because he's black bagging so many people that the courts can't keep up with it, so he can't actually deport a lot of them. So what he's doing is he's just putting them in prison camps. So Trump has succeeded in rounding up and kidnapping more human beings than Obama or Biden, but Obama still holds the record for actual deportations, for actually kicking the people out of the country. Trump is putting a lot of them in concentration camps. By 2012, immigration enforcement spending reached nearly $18 billion and was more than the combined budgets of the FBI, the DEA, Secret Service, ATF, and U.S. Marshals. The nickname deporter-in-chief is an apt descriptor of Obama. Biden and Harris condemned cruelty rhetorically and rejected Trump's aesthetics. They rejected Trump's like dog and pony show, basically. But they kept ICE funding at Trump-era scale. Under the Biden-Harris administration, deportations reached their highest level in a decade in 2024. Despite claiming border walls are ineffective, the administration waived dozens of environmental protection laws to fast-track border walls. Biden and Harris are not challenges to the system. They run liberal cover for it. Immigrants pay the price. Liberal performance. Performance of outrage by action, but actions that say otherwise is the Democrats' pattern. In 2020, millions mobilized under Black Lives Matter and demanded defunding police. Democratic officials responded with symbolic language. But across the country, Democratic-run cities increased police funding. This is the Democrats' pattern. Condemn violence, but preserve the institutions that actually create it. Democrats are counterinsurgency. And yeah, it goes on, the permanent, then it talks about how the permanent crisis is useful to the Democrats. Democrats don't fail to resolve immigration because they're weak or incompetent. They refuse it because irresolution is politically useful. They refuse to do anything, meaning. And I think that is the key point. It kind of annoys me when people are kind of being critical of the Democrats and then they're like, yeah, they're just so weak. It's not actually that they're weak. It's actually that they want it to continue this way. Not just on immigration, but on so many things. Because they are the capitalists. They are the ruling elite. They are the rich and powerful, mainly men, mainly white people who run this system. And they agree again, as I said earlier, with the Republicans on 90% of the structural issues of this country. Immigration, like abortion and policing, has become a managed contradiction. It's a crisis kept permanent because permanent crisis generates donations, turnout, and moral identity. The message is always the same. Vote for us or the fascists will come. But the fascists arrived because Democrats found the fear of them more valuable than defeating them. And I, again, think that last line is only a small piece of it. Yes, they found the crisis useful to get elected, but this analysis is ignoring the fact that it's also because they agree. They don't give a shit about immigrants. They're fine with immigrants being deported or being put in cage, the vast majority of these ruling elite Democrats. They just want to make sure their stock prices keep going up. Democrats are not hypocrites. What's happening is purposeful and functional. When it comes to ICE, Republicans provide the spectacle of cruelty, but Democrats provide its infrastructure. They maintain the state that cages, expels, and manages racialized populations. Democrats insist they are the last defense against fascism. In reality, they, and I'm paraphrasing, created the toolkit to hand to the fascists. So I thought that was well said, and it is being left out of the ICE debate. And for those of you who think that, oh, you only cover what the Democrats are doing wrong, that's not true. I've been talking about ICE for weeks now, and I mean, well, years, but it's been amped up in the past few weeks. And you know, I find it important to remind everyone of the guilt of the Democrats in this fascist shit show. So, all right, moving on. Let's get to some updates on Cuba, the next country that the Trump regime are seeking to destroy. Trump is starving 10 million Cubans. This was posted by Code Pink. Code Pink doing good work on this. Cutting off energy is genocidal. If Cuba's energy infrastructure collapses, there will be no power for the basic essentials for life. This will halt life and inflict massive casualties. And the deeper issue to understand here is that Cuba has succeeded in holding on to their revolution for 70 years. They are a tiny island that has gone up against one of the most destructive, powerful forces in the world, which is the U.S. empire, and they've succeeded for many decades. But Trump is cutting off all ability to get oil into that country so that they can't survive, so that people die. And it's the same. He's doing it differently because Iran has their own oil source of oil. But it's similar to what they're doing to Iran. They've bragged about it. They have tanked Iran's dollar, or whatever, not dollar, but currency. They have greatly harmed their financial system so that the inflation has increased by like 30% and people can't feed their family. And yet again, you have the U.S., in the case of Cuba and in the case of Iran, going, yay, people are dying. Yay, babies don't have baby formula. Yay, grandmas don't have heat. It's the most disgusting, repulsive, parasitic, it's unfathomable, the moral rot of this empire. And, you know, at the end of the day, we need to band together to stop it at its core. The Trump regime is cutting off all oil sources to Cuba. The U.S. invaded Venezuela and cut off that oil supply. They've successfully gotten Mexico, the other big supplier, they've bullied them into stopping their oil shipments. I'll bring this to you in a second. Luckily, Russia has said they're going to keep trying to get oil to Cuba. However, as we know, the U.S. has been invading and stealing oil tankers. The U.S. stole oil set for Cuba from Venezuela. That was December 10th. January 3rd, the U.S. invaded and kidnapped Maduro, forcing Venezuela to stop sending oil to Cuba. January 9th, Mexico sent 433,000 barrels of oil to Cuba. January 27th, Mexico stopped selling oil to Cuba. January 29th, Trump signs executive order to impose tariffs on countries sending oil to Cuba. And this is 100% the U.S., by the way. This is not the world as a whole. In fact, almost every year there's a vote taken at the UN as to whether to continue any level of embargo on Cuba. And it is the entire world versus the United States. Like 190 whatever to 1 against the United States. But the United States has veto power, so nothing ever changes. But sometimes Israel or Argentina will sign on and say, yeah, boycott, embargo Cuba, awesome, kill them. But in general, it's just the United States. The U.S. is escalating its 66-year-long genocidal blockade on Cuba. This is economic terrorism. The Cuban people have resisted almost 70 years of lethal and criminal blockade designed to destroy the revolution. They continue to resist. And yes, Mexico, although they were bullied somehow behind closed doors into stopping their oil exports to Cuba, they have dispatched aid to Cuba. They sent 2 Navy logistics ships from Veracruz to Cuba, carrying more than 814 tons of humanitarian aid for the civilians under orders of the president, Sheinbaum. The shipment includes staple foods, hygiene supplies, etc. The vessels are due to arrive in 4 days. The government of Mexico sends humanitarian aid to the people of Cuba through 2 vessels of Mexican Navy. So this is great, and every country should be doing this. However, the sad thing is that they're not sending oil, which is unfortunately what Cuba needs right now. Here is Russia has forgiven $30 billion of Cuba's debt. I think they did that a few weeks ago. Foreign Minister Lavrov announced that Russia would provide financial assistance and support Cuba in the face of the economic crisis. They continue to view Cuba, whose $32 billion debt has been forgiven, as one of the most important strategic allies in the Western Hemisphere. They say, we are fully committed to continuing the necessary political and financial support to Cuba. I don't know if Russia can get oil to them, though, especially not if the U.S. is literally just taking over oil tankers. But anyway, I wanted to bring you... well, the thing is, it's in Spanish, so I don't know if it's worth... I guess I could just read some of it. But Craig Murray, the British diplomat who's called out the empire endlessly and is a big ally of Julian Assange and was put in prison basically for those reasons in the UK. He's now in Venezuela, and he's put up a post about how those who are saying that the current Venezuela government, Delcy Rodriguez is now the president, has betrayed Maduro or is working with the CIA, etc. He's saying that's all bullshit. And he posted a statement from Maduro's son, clearly outlining that there is no difference in the government. He says they tried to decapitate the state and they failed. Again, it's in Spanish, so I'm reading it. As the doctor says here, the stability of the republic was put at risk, and we have a conscious people. The majority of Venezuelans are aware that our great victory is peace. Secondly, our armed forces are united. I repeat, anything could have happened, but it did not. Despite the pain, anger, and helplessness, the armed forces remained cohesive and stand firm today. The Republican institutions also hold and remain solid. The presidential office filled the vacancy, which Supreme Court has said still belongs to the president. Basically, he says that nothing has shifted. Obviously, Maduro has been kidnapped. He's in prison in the United States, but the government is the same, so it has not been toppled. And this is Maduro's son saying this and trying to make it clear that it's kind of a CIA psyop to get people who support Venezuela and people within Venezuela to fight amongst themselves. It's kind of a CIA psyop to say, oh, the current government betrayed Maduro. They don't support Maduro. Delcy Rodriguez just loves the United States. And anyway, it seems all evidence is to the contrary, that's all bullshit. So I wanted to bring you that as well, an update on Venezuela. Okay, one more story before I wrap this up. And, if I had to give a theme to today's episode, it'd be just exploiting both the least among us and largely those who are trying to do good. But exploiting and destroying and going after countries that have the least among us. I mean, Cuba is not a powerful country. They don't have a giant military. Their main thing that they create and export is doctors and medical care, and mojitos and cigars. And, we're going after them. We're going after Venezuela. We're going after immigrants that have the least among us in our community. And within that umbrella, the Trump regime, according to internal documents, has decided who it is that's the leader of Antifa. Antifa, as you guys know, stands for anti-fascist. And the thing is, Antifa doesn't and never has had a leader. It is a group of people that are very, lightly coordinated, and they basically come up with actions to try and fight against the fascist regime. And this was going on before Trump, under Biden, there's under Obama, but it obviously has stepped up under Trump. And there is no leader to like nationally to Antifa, but they've decided to create one because they want to feel like they caught the guy, right? They want to feel like, so this is Ken Klebenstein reporting that internal documents show they've decided the leader of Antifa is this kid named Chandler Patey, a 29-year-old who has been protesting outside of his local ICE facility in Portland, Oregon. And he offers up his apartment to fellow protesters who have either been injured or need a bathroom or need to wash off pepper spray. That's the extent of his activities. He basically had an apartment near the protests and said, you can come use the bathroom, you can come wash off pepper spray, you can come deal with the fact that you got shot with a rubber bullet by ICE agents, etc. And why did the FBI and Donald Trump decide to declare this guy's the head of Antifa? Because Fox News told them to. The Department of Homeland Security said he is the leader of Antifa in Portland, Oregon. That phrase appears in an internal report produced by DHS, the largest law enforcement agency in the country. As they see it, Patey, a young man accused of no crime and who looks like a random protester plucked off the streets, is a domestic terrorist. In Patey's apartment, Fox News hosts Laura Ingraham and Jesse Waters saw something sinister. They called it an Antifa safe house, and they called it that on multiple segments. This kind of idiocy is hardly unprecedented by the standards of cable news, but the federal government is buying into the hysteria. And also, they want to show, this is an ongoing theme, by the way, of the FBI. And again, we got a lot of connecting themes here. This shows that there's not a lot of difference between the Democrats and Republicans. The Democrats and Republicans have behaved the same in terms of the FBI for many years. And the FBI is often involved in either trumping up risks or threats to the nation, to people, or actively creating threats so that they can justify what the fuck they do, so that they can justify arresting these people, so they can grab this kid who offered his apartment for washing your pepper spray off your eyes. They can grab him up and say, we did it. It's a good thing you gave us millions of dollars. We caught the head of Antifa. And that is how insane our FBI is. And it's been like that under the past Democratic administrations, and it's like that under Trump. It's maybe even more crazy under Trump, I guess, to some degree. But I remember the article from years ago saying that it was found, this was like 2015 or even before, it was found that 6% of the time the FBI catches a quote-unquote terrorist, they were somehow involved in creating the terrorist plan. Either they fed the plan to the person, they had an informant who was like his best friend who happened to be standing there going, that's a great idea. I like where you're going with this whole knock down the buildings thing. Keep going with that. And then they're calling up the FBI and saying he wants to knock down the buildings. They've been involved in the vast majority of the terrorist planning that they then catch and stop. And so, yeah, Fox News says it's Antifa safe house. Documents leaked to me show Patey and countless other American protests have been branded as domestic terrorists. As a result, their private information is now being collected and stored in the DHS intelligence system. Patey's inclusion in the system and how this squares with what their spokesperson said, who said there is no database of domestic terrorists run by the DHS. Which doesn't really explain why Ken Klippenstein has copies of it if it doesn't exist. The government's elevation of an ordinary citizen like Patey to a terrorist mastermind is the result of a subtle bureaucratic process revealed in this and other DHS documents I've obtained. They show that since almost the beginning of the Trump administration, DHS has been desperate to pull together evidence, no matter how thin, of an epidemic of left-wing domestic terrorism. This bureaucratic imperative to find terrorists among protesters is what got Renee Good and Alex Preddy killed as well. So they're trying to invent this thing that there's left-wing terrorism, whereas if you actually look at like the mass shooters and everything across the country, almost all of them, with only very few exceptions, are right-wing or right-leaning. And yet Trump and his goons want to create some sort of left-wing terrorism. So they basically find left-wing groups or leftist groups or leftish groups, and they try and elevate it to the level of terrorism. But of course, following ICE agents around your city when they're riding around in cars and just making their life difficult, guess what? That's not terrorism. That's just civil disobedience. You're not getting in the way of anything. You're just following them around, reporting on them, maybe alerting people in the neighborhood to their presence. I mentioned it the other day that someone said was a good idea is people pushing their car alarms when they see ICE agents walk around. So you don't even have to get in the ICE agent's face. The car alarm goes off. Everybody in the neighborhood looks and what do they know? They see ICE agents walking around. Anyway, wanted to bring this story to you that the Department of Homeland Security thinks that they have thinks they have decided who is the head of Antifa. And it's this, I really shouldn't be laughing because, of course, this guy's life gets destroyed. I don't know what they're doing to him. Last I checked, when I Google his name, I can't find that he's been arrested for anything because it's not illegal to open your house and let people wash pepper spray out of their eyes. But it's possible they're going after him in other ways, maybe audits or other ways, Sometimes it's to interrogate him and try to catch him in a lie, and then they can say he lied to the feds. They have techniques to go after people who have not actually broken any law. And to circle back, this would be the type of person involved in activism, involved in trying to stop harm to innocent people. This would be the type of person that they can use that once they achieve it, they can use that cut them off from the financial system tool that they've used against Francesca Albanese. This would be the type of activist that once we are fully switched to all digital banking, they can cut you out and make it nearly impossible to get by. So maybe let's not do that. I'd be like, so cool, wouldn't it? If we didn't do that, it'd be like so awesome. All right, I am going to wrap up. I have another live stream Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. But I know what all of you are going to do right now is go check out realecamp.substack.com. Read the free column I put up today. 13 ways you know that Jeffrey Epstein's connected to Israel. And read the column I put up Friday, which about the Trump administration bragging about the harm they're creating the protests in Iran, but also about the harm they're doing to Iran. That's all up there, realecamp.substack.com, and then you're going to become a member for a whopping $6.60 a month if you sign up for a year. All right, thanks again. Keep fighting.